How's everybody's summer going so far? Well, this has been quite an adventurous time for me since my last lecture, and maybe I'll be able to cover a little bit of that at the end if time permits. How many people are here for the first time? Raise your hands. This lecture isn't really for the rookies. So this is definitely a lecture more for the veterans than the rookies. So I'm going to apologize to the rookies before I start, and you'll understand that as things unfold here. It's frustrating going through life watching people buried in a belief system that has no basis in fact, and it's basically propaganda. And if you hear things enough times, you start to believe them. So at my age, I'm 54, my cup has been pretty full with all the things that public school taught me and the things the doctors taught me. I grew up in Livonia. This is, a hometown area for me. And either A, you play the game like everybody else, or you try to make a difference, because I find it amazing going through this 31-year career how many health professionals will do things to you that they don't do to their children. How many things that they'll do to you. They asked a lot of cancer doctors, would you take the treatment that you do? A secret survey. The majority said no. They asked the cardiologists, do you take vitamin E? Most of them said yes. Would you recommend it for your patients? They said no. I find this interesting. You ask the doctors, do you get all these shots that you're supposed to get? No. Now, if you want to be a gangster, Wall Street has openings. The Democrats and Republicans are loaded with gangsters. The country's been taken over by gangsters. So today, I'm going to seriously challenge your belief system. Much farther than you probably thought I was going to challenge your belief system. So for the rookies, just hopefully you've done your protein shake, and I don't think this lecture's ever really been done before. I've been putting some things together for years, and finally, with the help of a lot of health professionals, and I know a doctor's seminar that I was at a week ago, he had to tell this entire crowd of doctors, I was there for continuing education, I got to say hi to Dr. Stuart White, because he said, I want all you doctors to go to Dr. Tent's autoimmune lecture. And I was slinking down in the back in my usual position. He said he did not tell me to say this. So I know there's a lot of health professionals out there, and I hope that you're going to get some insight so you can go back to work tomorrow and start saying some different things. And I think you're going to learn something today. So Stuart White, I don't know whether to be happy that you said that to that entire crowd or not, but we'll see how this goes. Now, since the last time I was up here, I cannot believe how many stomach problems. Now, before I start, I don't want to pigeonhole myself with this type of a disease process. I have a pretty standard practice. I have lots of skeletal issues, back and neck things. I have a ton of stomach problems. I have a ton of autoimmune problems. I have kids. I have old people. I have an entirely widespread practice. It's not just about this topic, but this topic I wanted to cover once. And this is going to be an interesting topic for you. Now, I have so many stomach problems that come into my office, I cannot believe how many people have stomach problems. How many people out of this crowd, whether you're a patient or not, have suffered significant stomach problems? Raise your hand. Okay, good. Dr. Jeff is going to do a lecture on Pediatrics 101, to protect your children, part 1. He's been doing some great lectures. And how many people have gone to Dr. Jeff's lectures? Raise your hand. Good. He's helping you navigate this health world that has seemed to have been derailed. I just am counting down the days till the government takes over my health care. I'm just, you know, Michelle Bachmann said something that represented me, and I'm not necessarily endorsing her. She said a lot of people don't have insurance because they don't want to have insurance. I've raised my family without health insurance because I've kind of separated myself from that system. I cut that system loose when I was 13. That was it for me. My kids are 20 and 22. They've never been to a pediatrician. They don't even know what they do. And I've chosen to raise my kids differently. I don't need the government telling me how to raise my children because I don't think they can actually run the government. So if you get a handle on the government, you can come and take a shot at me, but until then, just work on what you're doing now. That's right, I got the clicker. All right, here we go. They finally trusted me with the clicker after all these years. It's like, I've grown up. Maybe not, they might take it away before this thing's over. I was really excited that the AMA site, Virtual Mentor, has suggested that they pass a federal law so I have to take part in vaccine trials. How many people would like to take part in vaccine trials? Raise your hand. How many people would like to be experimented on? I don't even know how to answer this. I don't even know what to say. So they want to pass a law, so you and I have to. They're tired of getting like the homeless and the unemployed people. They want to really get into mainstream America. Now, as we start, cancer and autoimmune diseases are linked. This lecture is going to be broken into 4 parts. We're going to start with a history lesson that most of you have never heard before. There's a history lesson, there's a good side, there's a dark side, there's my autoimmune stuff, and then there's all the patients. So you have to sit through this beginning history lesson before we move on to the autoimmune stuff. Viruses have been suspicious in the start of cancer, and this is a short review of the literature. 1901, 1911, 1930, tumors, breast cancer in mice. They studied chicken tumor cells. They started to find microscopic findings in 48. They found virus-like bodies in human breast cancer in 49. They were able to give mice cancer in 49. They started to think in the 50s that virus is a huge cause of human and animal malignancies. In 51, viruses they thought were the cause of cancer. 53, they questioned whether leukemia was caused by a transmissible virus. And 55 is where things started to get interesting. From 1999 to 2001, the story that you're going to hear was investigated by 60 Minutes. They put more time and money into this story than any single story they had ever done in history. More money and time than anything. And by the time they got done, they said there's no way we can talk about this topic. Dan Rather killed it. I'm trying to get this back. If I get this back, can you see better? I don't want you to sit where you can't see. I'm always in the back row, so I understand that. I was hiding at Dr. White's lecture, and he had to say that in front of everybody. my own business in the back, where I do my best work. And I was working on this lecture actually in the back. No, I was listening to Dr. White. He said, you got to send me a copy of this DVD. He's a great practitioner from Houston, Texas. So this never aired. This was absolutely shelved. 1942, antibiotics were released. 1943 was the onset of the polio epidemic. There was a panic about polio. Just people can still have held on to that panic. 999 out of 1,000 people that had polio thought they had the flu. It looked like the flu. There was a very tiny percentage of patients that actually developed paralytic polio. The amount of people that had polio at its epidemic was 2 weeks of patients that have died from cancer. So things started to get strange when they started to use antibiotics on viruses, and they knew they had to make a choice: restrict the antibiotics or develop a vaccine. Polio was going up, started to trend down. If you look at history, diseases have been cyclic throughout history. What actually stopped most of the diseases, which the doctors like to take credit for, was sanitation, sewage control, refrigeration, central heat. When you watch Gunsmoke Days and you look at the nice little town, they had open sewers in that town. This was absolutely a disgusting place to live. It didn't look like it lived there. Central heat, they say, stopped whooping cough. So despite the irritating patients that are the engineers, you've actually had a huge part in stopping disease. And those involved with the vaccine: Dr. Salk, Bernice Eddy, Sarah Stewart. These were brilliant women whose place in history has been absolutely neglected. They were absolutely brilliant women, and Dr. Sabin. Salk polio vaccine was rushed into production. We had a president that had polio. The public was being, it's like terrorism, it's like drugs, it's like the swine flu. We've all seen these panics before, and we're kind of getting tired of the panics. But Dr. Salk had strains, these polio strains, that would be inactivated with formaldehyde and injected into children. Just at the absolute, just before they did release this, Bernice Eddy was a brilliant bacteriologist at the National Institutes of Health. She was told, you better safety test this new Salk vaccine. She discovered faulty batches of the vaccine. What she found was that the virus wasn't dead, but still alive and able to breed. When she tried it on her monkeys, they were paralyzed in the cages. She tried to delay the release of the vaccine. A handful of prominent doctors stepped in to throw their weight on the reputations on the side of the vaccine. Dr. Alton Ochsner was a major stockholder and the past president of the American Cancer Society. He was so convinced of the vaccine that he pulled the entire medical staff together at Tulane University. He vaccinated his grandchildren. He killed his grandson in 48 hours, and his daughter got polio and was paralyzed. 48 hours. By the way, the kid went on to sue Cutter Labs where it was made, and that was thrown out. Despite that, the mass inoculation proceeded on schedule, and within days, children fell sick from the polio, some crippled and some died. It was the biggest fiasco in medical history. There was lawsuits everywhere. The director of the NIH resigned. The Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare stepped down. Old Tricky Dick, Richard Nixon, was given the job of restoring the reputation of the National Institute of Health back in 1955. This is a timeline we're going to go through, and we're going to finish up the current time. Bernice Eddy was taken off polio research and transferred to the influenza department, where she meets Sarah Stewart. These become lunch partners. Stewart proved that some cancers were caused by viruses, as well as discovery of DNA recombination, which is still used today. In 1957, they named it polyoma. A virus causing cancer was called polyoma. Sarah Stewart and Bernice Eddy discovered this virus, which caused multiple cancer tumors in a variety of small mammals. It was the first time one virus caused cancer in several different species. She then took suspensions of the material from these kidney cell cultures, injected them into hamsters, and the cancers grew in the hamsters. Now the problem was the vaccine manufacturers had grown their polio viruses on the kidneys of monkeys. And when they removed the polio virus, an unknown number of other monkey viruses came with it. The more they looked, the more they found. Medical science knew little about the behavior of these monkey viruses. This was a watershed event in cancer research in 1959. Now, to this day, when you go into the doctor and ask, how did I get this cancer, viruses have been a major player, and they can't talk about it because of something that happened to you. In 1959, Bernice Eddy, confronted with overwhelming evidence, came to the conclusion they had just inoculated an entire generation with cancer-causing monkey viruses. She was the first one to predict an epidemic of cancer in the future. 1959, that was the year that it became classified. Done. That everything stopped when it came to public information. Soon the research identified an Asian monkey as the natural host of the cancer-causing, at the time they called it the polyoma virus, and gave the virus a less hysterical name, SV40. You know why they called it SV40? Because they found 39 viruses before this one. In 1960, the clip that you saw was by Maurice Hilleman, the head of Merck's Vaccine Research Department. They also found the simian virus on renal monkey cell cultures, and they found even Sabin's oral vaccine was completely contaminated, and that was fed to millions of people. Now, this affects me. My father had polio, so I grew up with a father that had. I've told my father in the past, I'm grateful that you had polio because I never felt that my kids should have the shot. I'd never felt like, it never entered my mind. Because I think my father was sick and broke down and picked up a virus that everybody else seemed to fight off well. SV40 is so widespread right now. It's certainly, we could take blood samples on most of you, and most of you, this is rolling around inside of you, including me. You're going to see that in a minute. The front page of the Journal of the National Cancer Institute in '97, this was the cover. SV40 was one of several dozen viruses that contaminated the original Salk and Sabin polio vaccines administered to children. This is going to tie into the autoimmune lecture. SV40 is repeatedly extracted in bone, brain, and lung tumors today. I have had 6 of my friends die from brain tumors. In the last 10 days, I have had at least 7 or 8 patients that are nurturing a 48 to 58-year-old right now with brain cancer. My hockey buddy that I'm going to play hockey with tonight just went to say goodbye to his sister. She's 50. They gave her a cancer drug so that you can only do one time in your life, and it fried her brain, and the cancer came back anyway. A guy was in Monday, said, I'm all broke down because I'm trying to nurture my sister and take care of her kid. She's 53. She's had 3 brain surgeries, and the cancer keeps coming back. How many of you older people remember hearing your entire generation littered with brain cancer? Are you tired of hearing about brain cancer? It's everywhere. And it's on people my age. I've been I lost one of my hockey buddies, and his sister-in-law was in today, and this kid and the brother that I still play hockey with could not even come to this lecture because he said he won't be able to take it. I remember the fundraiser for his brother. USA Today had a big article that I use. It's on the wall in the office. They're finding this monkey virus in 43% of tumors with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. 2 of my friends in chiropractic school had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. 2 of the kids that I grew up with. The research was done, etc. October 1960, Bernice Eddy gave a talk to the New York Cancer Society, and without warning, the National Institutes of Health in advance announced she'd examined the monkey kidney cells in which the virus was grown and found that they were infected with cancer-causing viruses. This went over like a brick. This was tantamount to forecasting an epidemic of cancer in America. No suggestion of cancer-causing monkey viruses was welcomed at the National Institutes of Health. When the cussing stopped, they crushed Bernice professionally, took away her lab, destroyed her animals, put her under a gag order, and delayed publication of her scientific papers. 1961, federal regulations went into effect in the US that required that one virus, which was the worst one, to be removed from the polio vaccines. But the law said you don't have to destroy the seed lots and you don't have to recall the contaminated vaccines. They continued on schedule just like they had. The contaminated vaccines were administered to children and adults until they were used up sometime in '63. 1962, Sabin introduced his oral polio vaccine. What was the problem with Sabin and Salk? They used the same culture medium, which was what? Monkey kidneys. So he decided to use a live weakened polio virus. Here's my records, which I found about 3 weeks ago today. 3 weeks. I remember standing in line at Taft School in Livonia for this little sugar cube in a little dish. I remember standing in line because some of my friends got in line a second time. Because I think they've been heavily fluoridated friends, but I don't know. I'm like, I don't think you should go in this line a second time. There's my records. I found out 3 weeks ago. Now watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 5 of those injectable vaccines. I only remember the sugar cube. I remember 64 and 64, oral and oral. I've had 7 of these. I've talked frequently at these lectures. If I ever went down with a brain tumor, lung cancer, or one of these other cancers, there's nothing you're going to do about this. And I'm going to show you how to activate this and inactivate this. So you look at my cancer lecture that I did, why I hit my immune system so hard, this is what's rolling around inside of me. That's just the polio. This doesn't count all these other things. Animals are littered with viruses. I did not know this till 3 weeks ago. From 55 to 63, almost every dose of polio vaccine produced in the world, 200 million Americans got it. They estimate that out of us right now, 1 out of every 200 people are getting cancer from SV40. They figured they caused 15 cases of cancer for every case of polio. Sometimes the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They started to realize cancers were skyrocketing, and it was the cancers they had no explanation for. Skin, lymphoma, prostate, breast, lung. I just saw the melanoma story again Monday night. They're trying to get us to buy the melanoma. For example, Superman's wife, what was her name again? No, not no, not Lois. That's TV. Huh? Dana Reeves. Yes. I always liked Lois. They made such a good couple. Oops. Got lung cancer and died, never smoked a cigarette in her life. So now you see why lung cancer is skyrocketing, because this caused it. As smoking's gone down, lung cancer has gone up. The 10-year-old girls that got their shot in 55 became of age at 40 in 1985. This is when things started to go crazy in the cancer industry. To quote the polio vaccine developer, I think to release certain information is not a public service. There's too much scaring the public unnecessarily. Oh, by the way, your children were injected with a cancer virus and all. That's not very good. Americans are getting cancer faster than ever. And the USA Today and JAMA in 1994 tried to figure out why are baby boomers getting cancer so much faster than their parents at the same age. Men born between 48 and 57 has 3 times as much cancer as their parents, and has nothing to do with smoking. They can't explain it. They know something else is going on here. And if you want to know really how far this thing can actually go, it's sexually transmitted also. They found it in 45% of seminal fluid and 23% of blood samples. Go get a blood transfusion today. I'm going to cover blood transfusions when I talk about how your immune system collapses. You can pick up a blood transfusion and you can get that SV40 virus and something you never even got the shot. You got the transfusion. That means that SV40 is found in children and grandchildren, people that have never had the shot. This was classified. This was a national security issue that's been blacked out through history. They didn't want this ever released until this little lady started talking in 1999. I'm going to give you all the references. You're going to be Googling this on the way home. I'm going to open up a level of study that you're going to find fascinating, and I haven't got to the bottom of it. It's a wormhole within a rabbit hole, and it just keeps going. By the way, there was an SIV virus also in that vaccine that acts just like AIDS, called simian immuno. It's a much smaller virus, and it's much more difficult to kill. The smaller the virus, the harder it is to kill. I have some clips, bonus clips at the end of this DVD that I'm not going to have time for to play that are just fascinating. This is one I can.
The many top dog researchers who is in Vancouver for the International Conference on AIDS. He is Harvard educated. He has a doctorate in dental medicine from Tufts University in Massachusetts. He's an international authority in public health education, and he's also a prolific author. When Dr. Horowitz first heard the theory that the AIDS virus and other killer germs were deliberately cultured as biological weapons and deliberately targeted at unsuspecting victims, he thought the mere idea mad, some wild conspiracy perhaps, or at least good grist for a sci-fi novel. Somewhere along the way, he's changed his mind. He's presenting his investigations at the AIDS conference in Vancouver on Wednesday, and Dr. Horowitz joins us in our studio. When did you go from thinking this was a mad idea to a possibility?
Robert Gallo's group at the National Cancer Institute and Lytton Bionetics also experimented with monkey and human cancer viruses, and they developed mutants. These with viral nucleic acids, including those that caused AIDS, white blood cell dysfunction, leukemia, lymphomas, sarcomas. What is progressive wasting is that? Does that look like an AIDS patient? And death in cats, mice, chickens, and humans. This is what they were manufacturing. Next.
It took me about 8 months having a document sit on my desk, which was a 1970 appropriations request for $10 million for the development of AIDS-like viruses. And it sat on my desk, and I realized I read it. It said the National Academy of Sciences National Research Council informed the Department of Defense that they could develop synthetic biological agents for germ warfare in 1970 over 5 years for the cost of $10 million. And that led me into investigate.
Now this is, people sign, we make copies of these DVDs and all the patients come in, they can get these, and you're going to have to read a lot of these slides because this one, what you read is better than what he's saying. Finally, these and other National Cancer Institute investigators injected such mutant viruses into human white blood cells and fetal tissue cultures to enable them to infect humans and even transmit the same disease. Go ahead, finish it.
Investigate whether that document was accurate, whether it was real, and then I began to investigate what happened to the money. And that's what ended up in me looking and finding the origin of AIDS and Ebola.
What do you believe about the origin of AIDS?
What I know and what I'm presenting on Wednesday is that it's a man-made virus. There's no question in my mind these viruses are man-made biological weapons, if you will, or they were developed for cancer research models by National Cancer Institute researchers, people under National Cancer Institute contract, who also were contractors for the Department of Defense.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Next slide. Kelly did a great job helping me put this. This lecture was far over my head. This was way too much to try to do, but this story just kept building and getting deeper. 1971. The first thing Nixon did when he became president was declare a war on cancer in the first week. He did that because he inherited cancer. It was done in the previous administration. They knew what had just been done to the American people, and panic started. Panic at the highest levels. They knew they were in for an epidemic. Doesn't he look so presidential there? Doesn't he? You'd trust him, wouldn't you? I don't trust any of them. In 1960, the team was established. Here's the past president of the American Cancer Society. Here's Sarah Stewart, one of the most brilliant researchers at the National Cancer Institute. And here's Mary Sherman. Mary Sherman was a brilliant orthopedic surgeon. She was a radiation specialist, and they put her in charge of the big lab. This is all gonna fit, just sitting. The big lab was ran by Dr. Mary Sherman. They needed a laboratory so they could start. They were trying to come up with a vaccine to stop the cancer epidemic. That's what was going on in Louisiana. This is going to tie in. Wait till you see what this ties into. So they had to have a government hospital. They got the U.S. Public Health Service Hospital, which was operated by the U.S. military, owned by the federal government. It was a full-blown U.S. government laboratory financed with millions of dollars from the public treasury. Here, they put a 5 million volt linear particle accelerator. They had 159 covert research projects set up. Remember, this is the big lab. This is where they were trying to stop what just went in all the people. Next. Oh, I got it. Dr. Alton Ochsner, this is his little history. Head of surgery, Tulane Medical School. One of the first guys to say cigarette smoking caused lung cancer. Had the famous Ochsner Clinic in New Orleans. In '49, became president of the American Cancer Society. He was a staunch anti-communist. In 1959, the FBI cleared him for a top secret position. Sarah Stewart was recruited in 1960. She left the National Institutes of Health and went to the U.S. Public Health Service in New Orleans, believing an anti-cancer vaccine was possible. Dr. Mary Sherman was the director. She was an expert on radiation. If a vaccine were to be developed to prevent an epidemic of cancer in America, the research was going to have to be done quickly, quietly, and privately. It was done by competent professionals, someone with resources, and someone willing to take the risk. Perhaps a vaccine might arrive in time to prevent a horrible and unprecedented wave of cancer among the American people. If they succeeded, they'd be heroes, praised by the press, welcomed by a grateful public, and rewarded financially and socially. If they didn't succeed, No one would know because nobody stuck their neck out. How do you develop a vaccine? You kill it or weaken it. The larger the virus, the easier it is to kill. The problem, viruses are tiny. Viruses, a virus would not be stopped by a condom. There's not one virus that's going to be caught. When they tell you this is going to stop a virus, it's not. Viruses are far too tiny. So the chicken virus, the poisoned eggs with formaldehyde, killing smaller viruses like SV40 is best done with radiation. They needed a linear particle accelerator. Nixon went to the CIA and told them, you need to take some of the millions of dollars that you stole from everybody to pay for the linear particle accelerator. This is not a cheap device. The monkey viruses in '62 at the big lab were radiated by the linear particle accelerator. They wanted to try to alter the genetic code, hoping something would be better. It only got worse. Then they invented, they'd radiate it, pull out the virus, put it in the mouse. They were growing tumors in mice bigger than the mice. Then they'd take it out, put the tumor in a blender, grind it all up, send it back to the lab, radiate it again, stick that batch in mice. They were looking for a way to come up, but it only got worse and not better. Smallest viruses like HIV are so small, they're hard to kill with ionizing radiation. If you don't kill it, you mangle it, you scramble it, and you make it a mutant. Now you've changed the genetic code and you made something that history has never seen before. And the bottom line is it may be less or more virulent. 1959. Castro's revolution starts. New Orleans is dependent on Cuba and Latin America for their trade. This was very, very important to New Orleans. They needed this place to stay like it was. They didn't need a communist to take over Cuba. Then the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. So then they put nuclear missiles just off the shore of Cuba. Now they could launch a nuclear attack and attack almost anywhere in the southeastern part of the United States, especially New Orleans. Now comes the dark side. That was the good side. This isn't the dark side, that's the good side. Now the dark side's next. They wanted to assemble, how many people saw the movie JFK with Oliver Stone? There was so much truth in that movie. Joe Pesci played David Ferrie. Mary Sherman, now she's in charge of the big lab. They assemble a bioweapon team. A bioweapon team. I got a great idea. Let's develop a virus since we're already halfway there, and let's kill Castro with it. Mary Sherman, now these people were convinced if you want to prevent World War III, you need to help us develop this weapon because something bad's going to happen. Kennedy's going down or Castro's going down. You pick. That's how they talk these people into doing it. So Mary Sherman was at the big lab running a linear particle accelerator. She's radiating the viruses, trying to come up with something that'll stop what they've already turned loose. Judith Very Baker, I'll cover her next. She's a 19-year-old girl that did brilliant things and faster than anybody on the planet did. And here comes an interesting name, Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald. When you find out what he did, you'll understand they gave this 19-year-old girl, this U.S. Marine, as a bodyguard. He was taking these viruses back and forth between the two labs. David Ferrie ran the little lab. Others involved, Carlos Marcello, which everybody knows, Jack Ruby, Guy Bannister, and JFK. This story, JFK was a tiny player in this thing. The story that could have leaked out made this one look like nothing. This is the little laboratory. So if you saw the movie JFK, when Joe Pesci had all those mice that he was injecting, and in the movie they said, what's the matter with this dude? They said, well, he's working on a cure for cancer. Well, no, they were weaponizing cancer. It was the opposite of what they said. This was the little laboratory in Louisiana. This is where the mice were held. The work was done at the big lab. Harvey is shuffling stuff back and forth between these labs. Judith, Very Baker, was a star science student in Florida high school. She wanted to find a cure for cancer because her grandmother just passed away from it. At 19 years old, on some crummy little lab, she was able to give mice cancer faster than anybody in history. She was able to give mice cancer in 7 days. Nobody had been able to do this. What she did was she radiated them and kept putting them in cigarette smoke chambers. Radiation, cigarette smoke. Radiation, cigarette smoke. This got out in the papers. She was visited by big shots. How did you do this at 19 in a high school lab? So in March of '61, Harold Urey, the guy in charge of the Manhattan Project, and Dr. Ochsner went down to visit Judith in Florida. Now, this is the guy that worked with Fermi. We should know what Fermi means because that's our nuclear plant, Fermi. Ochsner promised Judy, if you come with me, I will skip the next 2 years of medical school or in pre-med. We'll put you right in Tulane Medical School. We promised her all this stuff, but you got to help me create these cancer-causing viruses since you did this faster than anybody. 1961 to 63, this woman is at a cancer research training program. They closed her lab down. Young lady, do you know what you're dealing with? This is dangerous. You have no business. They closed the lab, confiscated her papers, and sent her to know how to do this professionally at the Roswell Park Cancer Center in Buffalo, New York. Here she was properly trained how to handle cancer viruses, and she is in all kinds of, this is very easy stuff to look up. This story has been hidden in plain sight in front of you all these years. This is not a secret. May of 1963, shortly after moving to New Orleans, Judith had a chance meeting, which she thought at a post office with Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee was already working with Ferry, Sherman, and Alton Ochsner on the bioweapon. Oswald set up a meeting for Judy with Mary Sherman and David Ferry. Joe Pesci played a great part in that movie of that guy. That was just incredible. They discussed the nature of the product and said, look, if you can make a cancer-causing virus to kill Castro, you'll prevent World War III. David Ferry, he was an oddball. He was an oddball. He's the movie explained it well. He was a strong anti-Castro supporter. He was angry at JFK for being soft on Cuba. He wanted Castro or JFK dead. By injecting Castro with cancer, the U.S. government would avoid the usual suspicion that a violent assassination would generate. Lee Harvey Oswald starts a relationship with this little 19-year-old girl. They're working side by side in a laboratory at the small lab, and they're handling the cancer-causing viruses. When you saw the movie, and they showed Lee Harvey Oswald protesting, supporting Castro, they showed the real clips. He was trying to act like he was a supporter of Castro so he could find a way to get in to the country. They showed leaflets, they showed, and Ochsner had organized all this so that he could look like a defector. Judith's assignment isn't to work on a vaccine, but to help create a virus capable of causing galloping cancer. Her job consists of harvesting 50 or more mice every week that have been injected with SV40 viruses mutated by exposure to radiation. She grinds up the most aggressive tumors, suspends them in calf serum medium, and centrifuges them to extract the viruses. She takes them to Dr. Sherman's lab to be re-exposed to radiation with the linear particle accelerator. Oswald was taking all this stuff back and forth. You heard about the Riley Coffee Company in the summer of '63. This was their cover story. They punched in at the Riley Coffee Company and left. They didn't want any ties to this laboratory. This episode, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, The Love Affair, was shown one time on the History Channel and pulled so fast. You can find it on YouTube, but the government never wanted this shown again, ever. And Judith said what she convinced Ochsner to do, was you had to get Castro and start radiating. You got to get this cancer in his body, convince him he's got it, and you keep radiating him and keep radiating, x-ray him again and again. You got to keep the radiation going. He'll think he's getting a treatment to kill a cancer when actually they're destroying his immune system so the vaccine can take root. She was successful at killing animals and a person in 28 days from the injection, but the stage had to be set. You had to beat the body up with radiation. After successful killing numerous monkeys with the biological weapon, the group, unbeknownst to her, they went to Angola prison and got a prisoner. They took this prisoner to Jackson Mental Hospital and gave him a whole bunch of x-rays, and they gave him the injection, and they killed him in 28 days, like they were supposed to. Judith got word that they just used her vaccine to kill a human being. She wrote a letter to Ochsner. Ochsner's secretary, this guy's trying to keep his hands clean because he's the president of the American Cancer Society. He doesn't want anything with his name anywhere near this. She writes a letter. He's got a temporary secretary that day. And the secretary, the temp, reads the letter and hands it to him. He explodes, calls Judith, reneged on his offer. This opened a can of worms that he did not want his fingers in. A few months later, Lee told Judith over the phone that they were going to kill Kennedy. Let's figure it's easier to kill Kennedy than it was to kill Castro. What kind of viruses have we learned to weaponize? We're getting to the autoimmune part next.
Dr. Kano contends that the Dietrich operation was, quote, a modest research and development facility, end quote. In fact, Dietrich's own history recalls it being a large, sophisticated biological warfare testing center. The facility employed some 300 scientists, including 240 microbiologists, 40 of whom had PhDs, 250 specialists in other disciplines ranging from plant pathology to mathematical statistics, and between 700 and 1,000 supporting staff. The operations occupied some 1,230 acres of federally owned land, upon which 450 structures were maintained. It produced annually some 900,000 mice, 50,000 guinea pigs, 2,500 rabbits, and 4,000 monkeys. There was also a large corral area for holding larger animals such as horses, cattle, and sheep. The cost of running Dietrich's biological weapons research alone was reported at $21.9 million in 1969. And here's another fact. By the falsely alleged end of Fort Detrick's biological weapons program in 1969, there were not simply 7 germs that America had weaponized. Conservatively, there were thousands when you include the bioterrorizing cancer viruses and other germs being cloned, mutated, and mass-produced for global distribution in support of the drug cartel's burgeoning cancer industry. This developing cancer industry really got a shot in the arm back in the 1950s when the first polio vaccines, produced in contaminated monkey kidney tissues containing cancer viruses, were being tested and injected in millions of people worldwide. The cancer virus was later identified as SV40. It was determined to cause cancer in nearly every species it was injected. After scientists and informed industrialists realized these vaccines were going to produce epidemics of cancer, cartel officials within the National Cancer Institute started a special virus cancer program, the SVCP, in 1962, according to secreted documents. Here is simply a partial list of the deadly viruses they created in labs by 1971. These included leukemia viruses, lymphoma viruses, sarcoma viruses, encephalitis agents, genital herpes, Hodgkin's disease, influenza, infectious mononucleosis, Kuru, that is the mad cow disease prion, breast tumor viruses, and much more.
How many people know people that have had these cancers? July 21st, 1964, Mary Sherman's lab was sabotaged. They connected the power lead on the linear particle accelerator straight to the switch. She grabbed the switch, it cauterized and vaporized the right side of her body. And the paper said she was murdered in an apartment. Well, they picked her up, sent her to put her in her apartment, tried to make it look like some weird sex crime, which it wasn't. And this was how they started to dismantle this operation, because things were starting to come out. It was the exact day that the Warren Commission started taking testimonies about JFK. The crime was never solved. Now picture getting Lee Harvey Oswald in court. They said if he got in court with all the laboratory sponsors, American cancer-causing contaminated vaccines, all the people involved, high up people and from the Carlos Marcella, maybe the FBI and CIA, this whole thing would have been a complete can of worms. He could not be allowed to go to trial. Jack Ruby kills Oswald November 24th. They were friends. They were both at the lab together. I can't answer all these questions, but I can show you most of this. Jack Ruby died from the effects of galloping lung cancer. When he had a cough, and they took him to they said, we're going to take you to the hospital, and they put him in an x-ray room, and they left him there for 45 minutes. And he didn't know, why are you taking so long to shoot a chest x-ray? He got a 45-minute chest x-ray. They brought a doctor down from Chicago that gave him an injection. He slipped a piece of paper out to the jailer, and what it says, they've injected me with cancer viruses. That's the note. He died in 29 days. A fantastic book. If you, on your iPad, Dr. Mary's Monkey, go into that website, listen to the long interview. It's going to shock you. It's a 2.5-hour interview it's incredible. Me and Lee was a book this came out. She finally wanted to clear his name because she was scared till 1999 to talk because everybody else is dead. The Men Who Killed Kennedy, you can see this on YouTube, and you want the episode, The Love Affair. She's going to tell you about all these labs and what was going on. A great book published in 2004, The Virus and the Vaccine, by Debbie Book-Chin and Jim Schumacher. Lethal Injection, the story of vaccination. This guy's going to open a can of worms, and he explains Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade wasn't what you thought it was. The vaccine manufacturers are buying aborted fetuses from Sweden for years. It was too expensive. We can get them right here. In Lies We Trust, CIA, Hollywood, and Bioterrorism, they says a rental. They're free to sign out at the office. These things go pretty fast. It's free to watch on YouTube. It's about 2.5 hours. I totally recommend that you watch that. Watching all this stuff and how all these patients come in with all these diseases. This is the viral panel that I start to run. These people come in, they got lupus, they got MS, their face is tingling, their feet burn. They look like their body's under attack. So I sent them to the doctor, and this all started back in the 2000s to get a viral panel run. This is the viral panel I run. Epstein-Barr virus, herpes 4, infectious mono. It's associated with lymphoma, 2 kinds of lymphoma, a nose cancer, MS, chronic fatigue, Sjögren's, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm here to tell you, after 31 years of doing this, a guy came in that disappeared years ago, and he came back and he had full tilt lymphoma. He was in recently, and he said, look, I haven't seen you for 5 years. Now I got lymphoma. I got this big knob hanging off my throat, and I had to come back to see you. You need to help me. How did I get this? I gave him that viral panel. I said, give this to your doctor and see if he'll run this for you. So when he was in, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, and he said, my doctor agrees with you. I said, that virus, that monovirus caused your lymphoma. He said, my doctor agrees. I said, your doctor agrees with me? 31 years of trying to tell them. The first guy said, we know viruses are causing cancer, and as soon as I'm done with your chemo, if you're still with us, we're going to run that panel, and I want to see if I cooked that virus out of your liver. The first doctor to agree that his lymphoma was coming from a virus. If you don't have Epstein-Barr, you have a 10-fold less risk of MS. However, among individuals who are positive, you have a 3 times greater risk. And don't let anybody tell you, once you've had it, it goes away, because it can be reactivated. CMV. 3 of my staff members have been plagued by these viruses. CMV, where's the host? We're back to the 2 monkeys, the chimpanzee, the orangutan. CMV, the Mayo Clinic says, often goes undiagnosed. They don't know what to do with it. I run this panel on a ton of patients. The virus remains with you for life, but it's not always active. CMV can cycle through periods during which it's dormant and then reactivates. What's the way of reactivating it? Radiation, blood transfusions. You can just go on and on. Antibiotic use, overuse. Ibuprofen shuts off your immune system. Steroids shut off your immune system. I'm watching people stomping on their immune systems constantly. Get enough radiation, get enough flu shots, and one of those dormant viruses that we all inhaled in the 50s and 60s is going to turn on. Transmission of CMV, blood, urine, saliva, breast, tears, semen, and vaginal fluids. It's not caused by casual contact. You can transmit it from vaginal fluids. CMV, the Cleveland Clinic, fever, low white blood cells, arthritis, fatigue, mental confusion, brain infections, headaches, migraines, out of control headaches, people that cycle headaches 3-4 times a month. It's a virus attacking their brain. Herpes. Herpes 1, it's not a cold sore. Neurobiology will tell you it's particularly damaging to the nervous system. These viruses are eating my patients alive. Herpes 2, eczema, influenza. It can go up and down. It can be reactivated by a lot of different illnesses. Herpes 6, undetectable by most cases. You kind of get this as a kid. It can become reactivated later in life. Herpes 6, MS, cancer, epilepsy, fibromyalgia, AIDS, chronic fatigue syndrome, seizures. I believe that's the virus that ate Richard Pryor's brain away. Herpes 6 loves to cause multiple sclerosis. And his MS was such a declining mess, he never got a break till he just sat there and just croaked from the thing. HH6 is more neurovirulent and is much more frequently found in patients with neuroinflammatory diseases such as MS. I really thought that was the one that took out Richard Pryor. Parvo virus. I've treated a number of people for the Parvo virus, and I want to put this up at the end, how this stuff, women are to see. I've noticed that the Parvo virus causes strange pains in people's bodies, strange wandering pains, some kind of strange arthritis. Thyroid antibodies, Hashimoto's, Graves' disease. You can see your thyroid attacked by a virus. I got it. Animals, you hear cats have leukemia. You hear about all these little animal viruses. Chick embryos and measles. Human diploid cells. If you nurses looked at the labels of your vaccine stuff, it's fetal DNA. It's right on the label in front of your face. It's aborted fetal tissue they're putting inside of your bloodstream. Monkey kidney cells. Animals carry viruses. It's touchy to get them out. You can't get them all out, and little ones can slide through. What's the difference between immunizations and vaccinations? Does anybody know? The word's not the same.
In fact, for the sake of accuracy, evading for the moment the use of vaccinations to make people sick, the use of the two terms, vaccinations and immunizations, have been successfully confused by the government and industry propagandists. Immunizations and vaccinations are not the same. Vaccinations typically cause hypersensitization reactions, including allergies, asthma, autoimmune diseases, and with contaminants such as mycoplasma or frequently inoculated herpes-type viruses such as the Epstein-Barr virus, cancers can be triggered. Immunizations, on the other hand, are caused by natural exposures to foreign proteins that challenge our immune systems. The confusion persists simply because health officials and professionals acting as propagandists, like Dr. Kano, want people to believe that vaccinations prompt natural immunity, which they do not.
My patients, my Vitanax patients, now I'm going to show you what the literature says. What does the literature say about autoimmune diseases? Curcumin inhibits autoimmune diseases. I take that Vitanax pill, I take 2 a day because I have wild, diseased monkey viruses rolling through my body in waves, and they're sliding this way, and they're sliding that way, and they're going up and they're going down, just waiting to find that landing spot. And I'm going to tell you, you can do whatever you want. If one of those things hits your brain, you can bend over and kiss you-know-what goodbye. I don't care what you do. I don't care where you go. You can go to all the clinics. You can have the chelation. You can go to the out-state clinics. You're done. I don't care what. You got 9 to 12 months and you're cooked. So you don't waste all your money, make your arrangements, get yourself in order, because I've watched a ton of people get this stuff in their head over 31 years, and they're all dead. Don't waste $500,000 to mangle your brain up. It's better to go down with some dignity and some pain pills than this kind of stuff. HPV. You should see all my little young girls right now getting HPV shots coming in with their demyelinated diseases. Lupus, hepatitis B vaccine, measles vaccination, higher infant mortality rates, influenza vaccines. These are the journals. I get all the journals. It says Google it. It's all there. Your doctors. I wouldn't talk about this as much as I am if they would just leave us alone. I'm tired of, my nurses lost their freedom. The nurse, you all lost your freedom. You can't even work now unless you get all these shots. You got to come up with an egg allergy, or you got to find some guy, some cousin to sign a piece of paper for you. Well, that lady on Fox News, that was about 3 weeks ago. How many saw that lady, that little black kid, 12 years old, called her down to the principal and gave her 4 shots? Who saw that on the news? I mean, I'll tell you what, that's, you know, that she has just a, yeah, it's time. You just come down here. They gave her a meningitis shot and an HPV shot. That was a catastrophe. Hepatitis B. Hepatitis B causes an aggressive MS. It'll cause an MS that you're not going to get out from under. I mean, you're not going to get out from under. Straight down. Vaccinations, they got a new word, transverse myelitis, Guillain-Barré. You know what all those things look like to me? Polio. How do you know they didn't give polio another name? Looks the same to me. That Hep B vaccine that they give to the kids at birth, I'm telling you what, significantly increases the risk of a wide range of autoimmune diseases. These are medical journals. Adult rubella, adult hepatitis B vaccines, chronic arthritis, Guillain-Barré. Well, when they did that swine flu stuff, when I was growing up, my brother went and got one of those, and he was sick for weeks. And when you see Guillain-Barré, they say, what does it look like? Well, it looks like MS, but we're not going to call it MS. We'll call it Guillain-Barré instead. It's a safer name. It's the same thing. The Gardasil shot, these girls come in sick, and the mothers have said to me, how, if I don't get the shot, how am I going to protect my daughter? I said, simple. You're going to have to fill in the little rhyme here. I said, just say no, don't be a... I said, it's real simple. And the mother said, well, that's a good idea. Yeah, pretty much. Let's give a 12-year-old a shot and try to convince her she can be promiscuous because of this shot. That's ridiculous. And while I'm at my rhyming stage, what song, you all know the song because the guy just died who wrote all the Disney songs. Bob Sherman. His kid came home and said, well, how was the polio vaccine? The kid said it was great. So he wrote the song. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine. That's where that song came from. Viruses. Everybody thinks, oh, you gotta. This has been in the literature for decades. They do not want you to know this because that's what they're putting inside of all of you. Viruses. All these animals got them. Can silently prime for and trigger central nervous system autoimmune diseases. Aborted fetal cells have been used to create rubella, measles, mumps, rabies, polio, smallpox, hepatitis, chickenpox, and herpes zoster vaccines. I think that next one is the clip. Watch this.
Also go to the World Health Organization's website under the rabies section, where it lists its information on human vaccines using human diploid cells. Here it states, as regards vaccines for human use, around 1955 there was a transition from vaccines prepared from animal nerve tissue to embryonated eggs, and very soon afterwards, around 1960, to adaptation of rabies virus to cultures of human diploid cells. Under the section titled Vaccine for Humans Prepared in Human Diploid Cells, it states, An inactivated rabies vaccine for human use was first prepared in cell culture in 1964. In 1966, it was shown that the human diploid cell, or HDC strain, Worcester Institute, or WI-38, was a suitable substrate for the propagation of the Pittman-Moore strain of fixed rabies virus. That vaccine was first licensed for use in France in 1974, and commercial production started in 1978. Further evidence of these aborted fetuses used as cell substrates in the growth of vaccine cultures can be found in the very inserts that come within the vaccine product. Here we see the product insert for the measles, mumps, and rubella live virus vaccine. This vaccine comes from Merck and Company, and is one of the most widely used and recommended vaccines for both children and adults. The MMR2 live virus vaccine is a combination of 3 vaccines. Part 1 is Attenuvax, the live virus measles vaccine, which is propagated in a chicken embryo cell culture. Part 2 of the vaccine is MumpsVac, the live virus mumps vaccine, and it too is propagated in chick embryo cell cultures. But Part 3 is called Merovax-2, the live virus rubella vaccine, and it includes the Worcester RA27-3 strain of the live attenuated rubella virus propagated in Worcester Institute-38 human diploid lung fibroblasts. And here's the insert for the inactivated poliomyelitis vaccine with a diploid cell origin. It states that inactivated poliomyelitis vaccine is a highly purified inactivated poliovirus vaccine produced by microcarrier culture. The viruses are grown in cultures of MRC-5 cells, a line of normal human diploid cells, by the microcarrier technique. The cells are grown in CMRL 1969 medium supplemented with calf serum.
I don't want calf serum either.
Finally, here's the insert for the Merck Drug Company's Verifax, which is the live virus varicella vaccine. It states that the virus was initially obtained from a child with natural varicella, then introduced into human embryonic lung cell cultures, human diploid cells, adapted to and propagated in embryonic guinea pig cell cultures, and finally propagated in other human diploid cell cultures, Worcester Institute-38.
Guinea pigs.
Further passage of the virus for varicella vaccine was performed at Merck Research Laboratories in human diploid cell cultures MRC-5. Now, what's most important for you to understand as a person who has or will possibly receive this and other vaccines using human diploid cells, including your children, is this. Each 0.5 milliliter dose of vaccine contains the following: residual components of MRC-5 cells, including DNA and protein. What does this mean? This means that every time that you, your family, your children receive a vaccine using human diploid cells as the growth medium, you are receiving DNA and protein structures from human aborted babies. They are introduced into your body
the pictures would have made
with
you
the vaccine.
sick.
You, as a vaccinated person, most likely have human aborted fetus particles.
That's foreign DNA in your bloodstream is the last thing on planet Earth your body's going to attack it. When your body attacks foreign DNA and attacks your body, what do they call that? An autoimmune disease. Did you put the two right in a row? This is a short one. This would be the last clip. This is just a short one.
Renee Leva, medical doctor, published an essay called A Brief History of Human Diploid Cell Strains. She wrote, The Pontifical Academy for Life published a response about the moral legitimacy of immunizing children with vaccines manufactured using cell strains derived from aborted human fetuses. In order to fully appreciate the level of cooperation involved among different agents, it is important to review the history of the development of these cell strains. The need to articulate the moral reflection on the matter in question arises mainly from the connection which exists between the vaccines mentioned above and the procured abortions from which biological material necessary for their preparation was obtained. Human diploid cell strains are batches of cells that are currently used for different purposes, including culturing viruses for the manufacturing of vaccines. Human diploid cell strain-derived human vaccines have been licensed worldwide for polio vaccines, rabies, rubella, measles, varicella, mumps, and hepatitis A. Current vaccines contain extremely small traces of the original fetal DNA, while the cell strains themselves contain the complete fetal chromosomal set.
They've already done this. Roe versus Wade wasn't about abortions. She never had one. It opened up this industry so they didn't have to go to Sweden for their material. It's on Clint Richardson's lethal injection. I gave you the, it's 2.5 hours. The last third is going to take you on that journey, how this story happened. I guess it's back to my clicker. Now we're going to go through the patients. The patients. There's a whole bunch of people in the crowd whose slides are up here. He will not be identified, but they're in the crowd. Multiple sclerosis and Epstein-Barr. 100% of the MS patients, antibodies. Multiple sclerosis. It's not just mono. It's viral reactivation, and I run these Epstein-Barr panels on people, and they say, well, you had mono, you don't get it again. You're not reading the literature. It's reactivated in 72% of the patients with their MS symptoms. They have no drugs for this, so they peddle nonsense to you. These viruses are carried in animals and a few other things which you're going to hear next. What makes your immune system weak? One of my staff members took antibiotics for almost a year for acne. In the middle of that year, while her immune system was suppressed, she got such an aggressive monovirus. She fell asleep in school a number of times. The principal or the school called her parents and said, your daughter's asleep again. Her feet burned. She lived with her feet in ice buckets for a year because her feet were on fire. Why are my feet burning? It's because it's your liver. That's why. So she knows if it flares up. Blood transfusions. I just sent a lady for a hip replacement. I said, give the blood. You got to give your blood. The guy said to her, we're so good at this now, you don't need to give your own blood. We don't have to do that anymore. She had 3 blood transfusions. So she came back and I said to her, let me ask you a question. You're a sensitive person. I said, what's different on you since that blood transfusion? She said, I can't believe you said that. I said, how much of your emotions have changed? She said, I'm different. I said, what? She said, I'm angrier than I used to be, and I'm stronger. She was picking up characteristic traits from the other person's blood. And she could tell that. She said, I can't believe nobody's asked me that question. She's a very sensitive person. I said, if anybody can tell, it's you. She said, I can't believe you said that. I'm different since I got 3 blood transfusions. Vaccinations. My son's in the audience out there, and they have, my kids have never seen a pediatrician. There's no camp they didn't get into. There's no school they didn't get into. There's nothing they couldn't do. And everybody realizes my kids are awful healthy. They've done well in school. Their brains haven't been addled. I never mentioned mercury. I didn't talk about all these additives. This is the part that's never been discussed. What are these things full of? They're full of viruses. Ibuprofen, Motrin, Advil, great painkillers used temporarily. I watch people not get out from under infection. I've had hospitals send me patients. I've had clinics send me patients with infections eating their legs away. How many Motrin do you take a day? I take 9. Your immune system's off. I have a family member, a close family member, that had a C-section. And after that C-section, which was a great C-section, emergency had to be done, came out of the hospital, and I said, she started to have some fevers and some headaches. I said, you were never like this before, what happened to you? She said, when I got out of that hospital, after that C-section, I walked out of that hospital with something I didn't have when I walked in. There's no such thing as minor surgery. So if you think things a minor operation, you're nuts. You're absolutely nuts. They cut inside of you and your system's suppressed. They hook you up to all that monkey business. You're not going to be the same. They don't got to cut into me. You're not cutting into me unless you have to. Poisoned air, water, and food. That'll be the next lecture. Toxic environments. Stress. Stress shuts off your immune system, so try to live on this food stressed out all the time. I've missed 3 days in 31 years, not because I'm healthy. I have to work at this constantly. Puck drops at 10. I got to keep going. Radiation. People that live, I have patients that have had so many CAT scans on growth plates, on growing children, sinus infections. 95% of my patients that come in proud with their CAT scans have had them for no reason whatsoever. Their insurance covered that. So when they said there's 30,000 people dying from CAT scans a year, that's what they said, not me. Is it the CAT scan or did that virus turn on? Which one is it? When I get done with this, Lou, you're going to start the car today because that's what I got Lou for. Judge, you're going to have to watch my back. Anything happens, Judge, I'm going to need you. Lou's going to start the car. You got to run interference for me because they're going to, my car, I'm never going to start it by myself again. Never. Never. It's a stick, so you can't put an automatic car starter on a stick. Boom. Spangler, you're going to start the car. I'm going to hire you to start the car. Toxic family members. Work environments. I like to go into like a hair salon. What's it like to stand in a hair salon? And what's it like to go and, it's horrible. And it's like, why don't you just, if you own a hair salon, we all got to do something. Don't even bother getting a retirement program. There's no, save your money, have a good time. I mean, you better get your detox pathways working pristinely. I do this, I'm very aggressive on my detoxification pathways, but that's another lecture. Work environments, fear. I've talked about fear. You know what it's like to watch a bunch of people who live in Detroit their whole life? I consider me living in Detroit, grew up at 6 in Inkster. And you turn on the TV and it's the Al-Qaeda, it's the Muslims, it's the blacks, it's the whites, it's the swine flu, it's the bird flu, it's the TSA, the guy's gonna blow everything up. Turn on Fox News when you get home. You wanna know what it's like to be terrified? Cops holding some guy on the ground with a gun to his head, and it just goes on and on and I have not raised my children in fear. We are a tough family. Just ask the Northville police. Anybody that's seen my earthing lecture, we are still well known in Northville. Our house was broken into. We grabbed the guns, grabbed the laptops, and tracked them down with a dot. A Northville cop said, nobody does this. I said, yeah, you haven't ran into us yet either. I am dead serious. The patients. Rheumatoid arthritis. What do they look like? Attacks of random pain throughout the body. Also a lot of inflammation. Steroids and Topamax. A 20-year female. I know she's in the crowd because I saw her. I said, something's destroying your soul. Obviously, your body's under attack. 6 EBV, herpes 1 and 2. It took 3.5 months, and I'm going to put a list of the supplements that I use, and you got to be picky. It's a big list. You got to pick out, you got to be a professional muscle tester to find out that each of these cases is a unique lock that you got to play. Took 3.5 months. She has no rheumatoid pain. Living on steroids for 20 years, that shuts off your immune system. And when your immune system shuts off, what can happen with that funny little virus? 43-year-old female. This gal did something to do with the Super Bowl. A makeup artist at the Super Bowl. Nice gal. Body, muscle aches, constant move around. Patient concerns, weather change, fatigue, never feels rested. Had breast implants. Health has gone down since the surgery. CMV, Epstein-Barr, Parvo 1, 2, and 6. She struggled a little bit to take this seriously. She's finally grabbed on and ran with it, and she's... Now all these people have to live the rest of their life with half an immune system. Go get a tetanus shot, go get a blood transfusion, get a flu shot, you turn this on. Go put another virus in your body and watch you start a cascade that you're not going to stop. She's doing outstanding. I'll show you the cocktail. A 41-year-old male, flu pneumonia vaccines, lived overseas. This is a big shot at Ford Motor Company. This guy would be one of the big directors at Ford Motor Company. Very nice guy. He's on methotrexate and Plaquenil. I ask patients, do you know what House said about methotrexate? They're all confused about this one sick person, and one said to the other one, put him on methotrexate. Put him on methotrexate. And the camera, I can only say this because House said it, I can't say this because I don't count, it's the TV guy that counts. The camera comes right up here on him, and he looked in the camera and said, that's bottled death. Bottled death. I didn't say it. It has to be real because it's on TV and House said it. That's real. Gets his flu pneumonia shots, lived overseas. You start seeing these patterns. My missionaries, my Peace Corps workers, my travel vaccines. It took about, 3 months. Night sweats. A lot of these people have night sweats. Why? Your body's sick. There's a fever in it. Joints doing much better. The fever stopped. Now he's got all this stuff rolling around his body still. Rheumatoid arthritis. Original swollen joints, difficulty walking, fatigue, muscle spasms, joint pain, fatigue. She moved from Albania in 1998. Started in 1998. You should see the vaccines to come to this country. She got this ever since she got her vaccines from Albania. Great gal. She's doing very well. Welcome to the United States of America. Hepatitis A, hepatitis B, flu, B, meningitis, measles, meningococcal, mumps, pneumonia, pertussis, polio, rotavirus, rubella, tetanus, and diphtheria, and varicella. I'm staying home. I think I'll just stay home. I welcome the foreigners, welcome to my country. Now you're sick like the rest of us. Congratulations. You're home. Just call it your home. This is how you treat. This guy's in the crowd, and I see him here with his family. This is yours. Fibromyalgia, body pain, low back, now all over muscles. Now all these people are getting adjusted. I'm dealing with their skeletal issues while I'm dealing with the inflammatory issues. Patient was severely ill after his military vaccines. So what do you do when a vet comes back and he's been thoroughly poisoned from his military vaccines and he knows it? You put him on an antidepressant, you put him on Valium, you put him on Vicodin, you put him on another antidepressant, and I don't even know what that one is. Migranol, whatever that is. You're not sick, you're crazy. You must be crazy. Elavil, diazepam, Vicodin, Cymbalta. This guy was lucky. You're out there in a crowd, I see you with your wife, you lucked out. It's not this easy. This guy was in this week, actually, and I was surprised. Cycles, headaches, and top of head 2 to 3 times a month. Headache lasts 45 minutes and sleepy. Of course, the MD says, you're not sick, you need an antidepressant. You need an antidepressant. I tell these patients, if I had a doctor like you, I'd be depressed too. I'd take an antidepressant. So he's on Zoloft. He lived in Haiti for a year on a mission trip. When headaches started, had all his travel vaccines. He was in for an adjustment this week. And he came in and he was tap dancing because he said, my headaches stopped and have never came back. Now this, I haven't seen him in a couple of years. So this guy was fortunate. It's still there, but this was, I guess, Monday. I said to Kelly, stick this guy in the list because I'm going to show you some that aren't winning. I'm going to show you some losers on this chart. Transverse myelitis. This poor gal, patient and constant numbness, her whole body, she can't feel her feet. Things are weird. She's got Bell's palsy. Something's destroying her spinal cord. Now, she got a hepatitis A. I know her in-laws are in this crowd. Hepatitis A, B, tetanus, and typhoid vaccines for a mission trip to the Dominican Republic 3 years ago. How long has she had it? 3 years. I said to her, you did this to go to the Dominican Republic, right? She said, yes. And Dylan's good friend, Zach, and his parents go to Punta Cana every year in the Dominican Republic. It's a vacation destination, and they never got a shot to go there. Who sold you those to go to where we vacation at? Folks, it's a sea of ignorance out there. It's time to kick that brain in gear and think. Just think. Your health depends on it. Our future depends on it. They're stealing your country while we're sitting here. They stole your country while we're sitting here. Thank goodness that he's not here. He's in Alaska right now, right? Or somewhere. I had to about staple his lips shut. He just couldn't shut up. I could not. Nice guy. The devil knows what he's doing. He takes out the missionaries. The people trying to make a change, he kills all of them off. Dick Cheney's going to live forever. He needs some vaccinations. He just keeps going. His heart stops. It's dead. 67 heart attacks. He's Satan's little sock puppet, but it's the missionaries that get sick. His heart's gone, dead. It just keeps going. Good people croak, and he just keeps on rolling. I don't understand. Only good. I think he's going to live to 1,000. Raping and pillaging every step of the way. Numb, tingling hands, feet, MS, blah, blah, blah. Missionaries, been all over the world, and get mono, then get those travel vaccines on top of mono. The nurses had been creamed. Nurses creamed. Flu shot for work, 2 out of 3 Gardasil vaccines, muscles ache, joints ache. Neurologist said it was post-vaccine syndrome. Had CMV in the past, gets cold sores, shoulder, fog, tension. She's 32. The previous generation with those big nasty viruses got cancer. These younger people are getting better at taking the real bad vaccines. These are just the light ones. I don't know what's going to happen in 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe you next generation of doctors, and there's a ton of them out there, you can mop up the mess when I'm done. And I don't think she followed through with what we wanted to do. Autoimmune hepatitis. She's in the crowd with her parents. Autoimmune hepatitis. Autoimmune hepatitis. Every time I get one of these, the hepatitis B vaccine, liver enzymes 400 to 700, had the hepatitis vaccine, your body's not going to attack itself unless you did something to it. Her enzymes are doing good. She's going to have to watch this. That liver has been, her immune system's been altered. It's not the same. This is a 69-year-old nurse. She's been a great patient. The older nurses are great patients. What they've seen, they don't want to do it anymore. So she came in, 2/22/11. She said, I don't know how I got this. I have autoimmune hepatitis. Her liver enzymes are up. So I asked her questions. She said, I had a horrible reaction to the hepatitis B vaccine 17 years ago. This is how they get away with it. They're slow viruses. They're quiet. They're slow. They move slow. So by the time my friend's getting brain tumors, it's 30 years after the vaccination. This is what she did in 2 months. She's got her liver enzymes down to 35 and 36. You're going to have to watch this. 27 years old. Warm joints, autoimmune inflammation, colitis. I've walked into these rooms and tell people, you're a missionary or a junkie. Well, how can you tell? Well, you must be a missionary because you don't look like a junkie. I said, what does that have to do with anything? I said, where have you been? Well, Africa, Haiti, somewhere. Well, yeah, I went to Africa. This is what they look like. Heart palpitations, we're back to the night sweats. This is how they're gonna live. 999,000 out of 1 million are gonna live like this because they're never gonna get to somebody who knows what they're doing. This is their life. And they're gonna be croaked off early because they're gonna put them on antidepressants, which shut off your immune system, give them Vicodin, that'll make them an addict, talk them into getting more vaccinations, and just croak them off quicker. And Dick Cheney's gonna live forever. Start a phony war and put your company in charge of it with a no-bid contract. I'm still after him for that. We're broke because of these yo-yos. And I'm not an Obama fan. Every time I pick on Cheney, somebody comes in and says, I didn't know you were a Democrat. I didn't know I was a Democrat either. The words for these diseases are precious. Inclusion body myositis. This guy comes from Traverse City. I did not think I was going to get this guy because he had the ultraviolet treatments to sterilize his bloodstream, and that didn't work, and those are expensive. I found 3 viruses. This has been he's done well. I adjust this guy every couple months. I'm surprised. I did not think this guy was going to. This is a famous radio host from California. She flew in to see us, and she was all worked up. She'd been to a ton of doctors in California. Somebody told her to come and see me. In fact, for you folks, Bernardo told her to come and see me. Some of you folks know who he is or was. And the point was, I said, you don't have MS, you got mono. She had an out-of-control mono. And this is 4 months later. Now the point is, no pain, weakness, or tingling, night sweats have stopped. She feels rested, she can sleep through the night. She told Mitt Romney's wife to come and see me because she's got MS. So this was, you know, to see like Mitt Romney's wife, I don't think Mitt Romney has enough money to come and see me. It's all gone. It's in some foreign place, and he's in like a 14% tax bracket or something. My paper boy's in like a bigger one, but I don't really think he's got the money to actually come and see me now. So just have to use your insurance, I guess. Tingling in arms and legs. These are the same patterns. Left side of the face. This lady's in the crowd today. She's excited. Epstein-Barr, herpes 6, simplex, etc. 47-year-old, joint pain all over. Started after chemo. This is a big shot at U of M. She's very surprised at her results. 56-year-old female. Right side of her body's numb at night, tingling behind shoulder blade, her legs are weak, swelling. Migraines behind eyes with lots of headache patients have viruses. You can spot them. The whole head hurts. They get that virus, the whole head hurts. My whole head hurts. This story is going to get back to her because this church, she used to contort. And she'd go into this weird spasm right in front of me and contort her whole face up. And right in front of me, she twisted all up. And I said to her, there's a virus attacking the nerve in the side of your face. I went in, I got her on, I had her chew 6 Calma Plus and take 3 lysine, and it stopped. And the whole face relaxed. And after that, I ran the panel. She only had 1 face spasm. This was mono. This whole church has watched her stop contorting up. I got lucky on this one. Everybody thinks it's a miracle, and I think it was a small miracle. Cluster headaches, extreme pressure. This guy runs a tool shop. He's on 9 medications. Very nice guy, easy to get along with. Numbness, tingling. Now see, here's a lady with headaches, body fatigue, numbness and tingling, gets her yearly flu shots. So this is headaches, fatigue, can't get out of bed, body aches, numbness. So what do they put her on? Prozac, Klonopin, and Excedrin. These people don't have a chance. This lady's in the crowd today. She was in actually today. Lost balance, right side of her head. Dr. wisely said, we think there's a virus and some nerve damage in your ear. It's actually in her brain. But Parvo, Epstein-Barr, herpes 6. She was in I think this week. She can't believe it. Her balance is back. The head pressure's gone. Now, the Japanese stopped vaccinating some of their children because they were all falling asleep. They said there's some kind of sleeping sickness. It's not sleeping sickness. They put that Epstein-Barr CMV virus inside of them. Now they're all falling asleep. She's in the crowd. I saw her out there. I'm amazed that these people can hold jobs feeling this crappy, because I, sometimes don't want to come in not feeling this crappy. I have some great doctors to work with, Brownstein, Nussbaum, and Ng. They've been great guys to work with. He came in, and I said, go back to Nussbaum or Ng, and I want you to run every viral test you can run. So it came back, EBV, CMV, herpes 1, 2, and 6. And the guy came in, he's had stem cell therapy. He's done all kinds of things. And he says to me, how did you know this? You're a genius. How could you possibly find this? I can't believe that you figured this out. This is a miracle. I didn't tell you anything. You figured this out. You found this, etc., etc. I said, for Pete's sakes, you said you had herpes. You said you had mono at 2 and 14, and you had Bell's palsy. I said, you told me everything. That's what's attacked. And he said he traveled the world. He traveled the world. When he came back after getting all his travel vaccines, this is how he came back. I'd rather stay in Detroit. I like to go down every once in a while, visit the Fist, hi to the Fist, drive back out to Northville, and no shots to do that. Just put the 45 in the car and off we go. I do have a 45 in the car. This poor gal breaks my heart. She's a teacher. She's sliding down the rabbit hole. Legs on fire. She was on crutches. Now she's in a wheelchair. I'm absolutely losing. I'm trying to get her to get on disability. This thing's so deep inside her spinal cord. I'm not. She's trying to teach school like this. It's a mess. This kid, you'll see this kid in a hall. He's on a walker. He's all twisted up. It looks like maybe it's polio, but we can't use that word because we cured that. Now we have Guillain-Barré and all these other ones. If you saw him walk, him and his mom come in, he's all twisted up. Smart kid. His viral panel's a mess. And if you look at the literature, they say acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. If they tell you that, you won't know what it is. But the National Multiple Sclerosis Society says, it's probably from a vaccination or an inoculation. I'll take the measles next time. This young gal came in, myasthenia gravis, double vision, weakness of both arms, leg fatigue. He fell on ice, couldn't get up, fell down the stairs, fatigue worse. Gave her these IgG shots, then steroids. Then they took out her thymus. Man, I don't want my thymus taken out. Then they gave her aseptic meningitis, cycles, fevers, swollen glands. She's poor, she's sick. She's gonna need a lifetime of care. I sent her to get her blood sterilized with that ultraviolet procedure because I think she's in deep trouble. Lupus, fingers, hands, body hot to the touch with burning feet. You can always spot that liver when it starts to act up. Almost done here. This gal, now, I had a famous medical doctor that I've named already. One of his colleagues sent her to me. They couldn't figure out why she's collapsing. I asked her my questions, transfusions, vaccinations, travel vaccines. She got 2 blood transfusions. She's on this. She's sliding down the rabbit hole. I'm concerned that she might not get out of this mess. As you go backwards, I sent her to try to get her blood sterilized with that ultraviolet procedure. Great guy. I missed this guy. 60, he was about 66 at the time, 66-year-old executive, very successful, wanted to go on a safari, saved his money, went to Africa on a safari, got all the travel vaccines, came back, had acute myelogenous leukemia 3 weeks after getting back from Africa. That's fatal. He chose not to do anything. He rode the train all the way down to the ground, and he's dead. And you're not going to get out of this one either. And his hematologist said, somebody did something to you that destroyed your bone marrow. Yes. These foods aggravate viruses. Try to get the antiviral diet to the patients. These really irritate viruses. Sunflower seeds. Have a mono patient, wake up and have a bowl of oatmeal. Eat some corn. All this stuff is going to get you. Chocolate, almonds, brown rice, Brussels sprouts, or anything high in arginine is going to aggravate that virus. I watch people cough eating corn. Staff member can't eat onions. A family member can't eat almonds, peanuts, and they know it stirs up the virus. Lysine helps shut it off. You got to take your lysine in the morning, your calcium at night, calcium herpes in the gut. He's calcium, people. Now, for the doctors in the crowd, this is not, I didn't put the pills on the cases because it's not a one-size-fits-all. You have to know how to test some way. Versandol, Good Heart, Van Rump. There's some muscle testing. There's some dowsing. You better be a professional tester because those people took between probably 3 and 6 or 7 things to kill that virus on the ones. I asked my staff members I asked my back staff members, how well are we doing with these viruses? How are we doing with these autoimmune cases? And Kelly and Amy said, we're getting 80% of them. They said we're getting 80%. Now, all these crippled up people that are, in wheelchairs and have really messed up, there's only so much you're going to get back. I mean, there's a limitation to this matter, and I hate to say that, it's just the way it is. Not to give people artificial hope like that kid on that walker. He's got some atrophy. But this combination, learning to use this combination, you start to see patterns. What viruses respond to what things, et cetera, et cetera. Good. Immune support, T cells, B cells. I'm very aggressive on my immune system because, like I said, it's a merry-go-round in my body trying to keep these things from landing. From Maurice Hilleman, the Merck scientist. This is good to read. It's 9:24. I forgot to take I have a hockey game tonight, actually. I'm supposed to take my heart pills at 9 because everybody that comes in my age that plays hockey, somebody croaked on the ice. I don't plan on being one of them. Now, this last little ending, it took me a while to be able to do this. My life has changed since this last meeting in some strange ways. My mother's not here tonight. This is like the first meeting she missed because she passed away since my last lecture. Now, a lot of you folks don't know this, but I've been treating my mother for like 22 years for her heart. Her heart would like to flutter. I've sent her to U of M to get that ablation done. Dr. Marati said she doesn't need it. 2 other cardiologists locally that I've used, she's been screened and says, there's really nothing you can do for this. So I've treated this for 22 years, and it would just kind of flutter and go in and out of rhythm. January 26th, about I think the 25th, I get a phone call, and her heart's beating funny. So she comes into the office, and man, this thing is jumping around. And it's not settling down. So, hoping it would jump back in rhythm, Wednesday, I get home from hockey at about midnight, and my wife says, call your dad. So I call him, Randy, I don't feel good. Comes in Thursday morning. Her heart was jumping all over the place. So I called a great MD in Northville. I said, look, I need you to take a look at this. This thing is for the first time is not jumping back in rhythm. He said, I'm honored that you would send your mother to me. I said, I want you to. So she went straight there. He sent me the EKG. The top of the heart was beating 160. The bottom was beating 70. She was an AFib. That's why these young kids die. That's why these marathon runners die. That's what Joey Harrington, this is very common in the children today. The guy that made the layup in that high school game and he croaked when they held him on his shoulders. He sends me the EKG. I send it. I take one look at this. He says, we got to send her to the hospital. I said, yes, we have to send her to the hospital. So I said, see, send her where you think it would be best. And he sent her to a hospital in Livonia. After work on Thursday, as soon as I got off work, I went to the hospital. My wife, my son, my dad are at the hospital. So I walk in, feel her pulse, it's beating perfectly. Your heart's beating perfectly. I said, let's get you out of here. So the emergency room doctor comes in. I said, her heart's beating perfectly. He said, I know, I cardioverted it. I looked at my parents, I said, you didn't tell me this. He said they didn't know. I put her to sleep quickly. Your son had your father out of the room. I paddled her and woke her up. She didn't even know I did it. Let's take her home. He said, I'd like her to stay the night. Fine. Stay the night. Everything's fine. How much could go wrong now that everything's back in rhythm? So, the middle of the night, she throws her first clot into her heart. I had her on enough fish oil to give her the runs. I had her on enough aspirin. We had her chewing aspirin, trying to keep that blood thin because AFib can be a problem. You know, I've been playing that hard as I can for 22 years because everybody says you just kind of got to watch this. So I go there after work on Friday. They want to move her to Oakmont because they have some stent procedure. We think your mother should have the stent, and Oakmont does a better job than we do. So I follow the ambulance to Oakmont. We get her in the room. We're ordering dinner. She's fine, my normal mother, and she strokes out right in front of me. And I watch this, trying to figure out what's going on here. So they said, we're going to do a CAT scan tonight, and we'll let you know in the morning. So the next day, this is Saturday morning, so the next day they call me, your mother's had quite a major stroke. And none of this is making any sense to me. I have a friend that's a nurse anesthetist. He's my age, he's done it for 30-some years. He calls me. I said to him, Calvin, what just happened to my mother? He said, tell me the story. I told him. He said, who did the cardioversion? I said, the ER doctor. He said, he whacked her. I said, what do you mean he whacked her? He said, a cardiologist wouldn't have done that. I said, what would a cardiologist have done? He said, you do an echo on the heart, the transthoracic echo. You check that upper chamber for clots. You thin down the blood. You do the echo again. And when the clots are gone, you paddle the heart. He didn't check her for clots. I said, so you mean? So I cornered this great cardiologist. Oakwood Hospital did a great job. They were wonderful. I cornered this cardiologist in the corner. He was a great guy. I said, look, he'd heard about, we've had some contacts with similar people. We knew all the same people. I said, look, I need to ask you a question. I'm not Sam Bernstein's relative, and Jeffrey Feiger's not my cousin. I said, did that guy whack my mother? He said, probably. So my mother just missed. She was dying to see this lecture. I never thought I'd have a story like this, because all day and all my life, people come in and talk about their relatives being whacked at a hospital. So she was dying to actually see this lecture. So, Mom, and just to leave you with a pleasant thought, like I said, I got to be on the ice in exactly 30 minutes. Just to leave you with a high note, to make you feel better about the future, the Texas Department of State Health Services decided to start dropping rabies out of the planes on the ground. Let's see you dodge this one.
I managed to catch up to Dr. Gallo at the 11th International Conference on AIDS in Vancouver in 1997. I asked him if he was concerned that some of his experiments might have given rise to the AIDS virus, or AIDS virus relatives, that might have contaminated monkeys and chimpanzees shipped by Lytton to the Merck's vaccine division in New York for the production of the earliest hepatitis B vaccines. Here is the exchange Dr. Gallo eventually apologized to me for. He was obviously aggravated.
Do you have any concern that your early experiments in taking simian virus 40 in the presence of simian foamy retroviruses and recombining them with cat leukemia and chicken leukemia sarcoma viruses might have given rise to HIV or its relatives following their culture in human tissues, and that these mutants could have contaminated some live viral vaccines produced in contaminated monkeys and chimps supplied to vaccine manufacturers through your affiliates at Lytton Bionetics?
Quick Frankly, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I'll cite your paper, Dr. Gallo.
If you can, you've got a paper. You've got a paper that I don't know I ever published.
Okay.
I'd sure like you to cite it. Would you begin?
I'd be happy to. National Academy of Sciences, 1970, Gallo et al. It was an oral presentation that you presented before NATO and NATO audiences in Mol, Belgium. You published it. It's in the National Academy of Sciences. I'll be happy to show you the paper.
Stop. I mean, this is beyond asinine. In Mol, Belgium, my first trip to Europe, so I can remember it, a NATO meeting did take place. NATO meetings fund all scientific meetings all over the world, even East-West at that time. Biologic meetings, scientific, chemistry meetings, all kinds of meetings about motherhood, fatherhood, everything. And what I talked about in Mol, Belgium was in the 1960s, long before gene cloning took place, before I ever worked in virology. What I talked about was cellular transfer RNA. Okay, and that's Mol, Belgium. Proceedings in the National Academy of Science, an SV40. I never published a paper in my life. An SV40, except the transfer RNA species in SV40 transformed hamster cells compared to non-transformed cells as a control. You've got pineapples, kiwis, grapes, and cherries mixed in with some other tutti frutti. I don't know what in the hell you're talking about.
And excuse me.
I'm a little bit tired of this kind of nonsense and crap.
And Gallo, Sarin et al. Were Lytton Bionetics researchers were your co-authors in which you combined cat leukemia and chicken sarcoma viruses to create to evaluate the leukemia sarcoma complex models.
I'm really smart. Yes, we did it. Everything was created by us working in the laboratory. Look, just for those with some little bit of understanding of this, who care about this kind of idea. I mean, I've had a lot of things said, but I've never had anything quite like that one. There were people who thought and made postulations that, and it was not actually directed at me, this is a good one, a new one, but that HIV could have been created in laboratory experiments. There are two answers to that are definitive, conclusive, that no scientist could have deliberately created them unless he was a super genius and 10 years ahead of his time. The AIDS virus definitively existed long before molecular cloning. That's point one. Point two, we know the full sequence. The genome of HIV, it was published by our lab in 1985 and by a group from Paris around the same time. The genome has no homology to any known existing virus in the world, except SIV, discovered after it. Has nothing to do with cats, has nothing to do with chicken sarcoma viruses. SV40 is a DNA virus that comes from little animals that can transform cells in culture, has no sequences in HIV. Further, we never worked with SV40 with those viruses together, and if we did, the whole thing would be irrelevant. And I think you need to begin with Biology 101 high school, okay?
These documents, including the U.S. government contracts, best explain how AIDS emerged on two far-removed continents in black Africans and gay New Yorkers by 1978. These were precisely the populations that received the first hepatitis B vaccines produced in Lytton's chimpanzees just 4 years earlier. By the way, the man sitting to Dr. Robert Gallo's right is Dr. Jonathan Mann. At the time, Dr. Mann was the AIDS czar for the World Health Organization. Not long after Dr. Mann witnessed my exchange with Gallo, he quit his most esteemed position, saying, quote, far more than a medical problem, AIDS is a socio-political imposition, end quote. If I am right, and these documents are legitimate, then generally trusted vaccines, the sacred cow of public health, given mostly to our nation's youth, said to have contributed most to conquering infectious diseases, are alternatively the world's worst curse and nightmare. The third and final document in this stunning sequence comes from the same National Cancer Institute and National Public Health Service report. Here is the historic account of American biologists and virologists transferring the most sophisticated bioweapons of mass destruction to Soviet scientists during the Cold War, even though, as Dr. Kano accurately states, the Russians were developing their biological weapons programs at rocket speed. These documents provide conclusive evidence that the NCI's molecular biologists, including Dr. Robert Gallo, traded America's most advanced secrets in bioweapons production with precise methods and materials for cancer induction, genocidal weapon preparation, and bacteriological and virological bioterrorism with their Russian counterparts and others during the Cold War, from the Gulf War, called Gulf War Syndrome. The Senate thoroughly investigated this subject in 1994 and published proof that our troops were unwittingly used experimentally, or alternatively, targeted for disease and death by the vaccine makers with official political consent. Spreading across America and the world now is a flu-like illness that resists standard medical treatments. You probably know people suffering with severe recurring respiratory ailments experts have linked to an agent called mycoplasma. In fact, chronic fatigue, low body temperature, and a flu that keeps coming back is associated with this germ isolated and patented by the United States Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in a patent shown here. This agent, mycoplasma, apparently contaminated the anthrax vaccine given to more than 500,000 American troops that served in the first Gulf War. Dr. Kano from the Centers for Disease Control applauds this invention. This next government document was obtained by lawyers for the victims I just described. Here you can see the array of biological weapons being tested on the prisoners in Texas as overseen by Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor, at that time, boasted having George H.W. Bush serving on their board of directors. The dates listed here also coincide with the alleged transition of America's offensive biowarfare program to defensive. Notice the mycoplasma. Both defensive and offensive studies were conducted, a vaccine study and a hall study, in which prisoners were actually exposed to this airborne agent